Welcome to your LINC Volunteers Orientation. My name is Ian Navarez, the Volunteer Resource Manager at LINC Volunteers.
And I'm Claudia, a volunteer.
We believe that if you're provided with a background and practical knowledge of LINC Volunteers, not only will your service make the greatest possible impact in the community, but you will also have a more rewarding experience during your time with us. We would like to discuss our organizational structure, our volunteer program, and the policies and procedures that will guide your service. I'm going to leave you now with Claudia. I want to thank you again for your time.
Many of the challenges our nation faces are being addressed by the tireless hard work of nonprofit organizations. Our philosophy at LINC is that you, the volunteer, are an invaluable resource. Our mission at LINC Volunteers is to mobilize community support in order to increase access to affordable housing and expand life-enhancing services for low-income families and seniors. We look to you, the volunteer, to encourage positive change in the lives of those you serve, as well as leave a lasting impact in the community by empowering those you've reached to continue the work we've started. LINC Volunteers is a program and a social enterprise of LINC Housing Corporation, a California-based nonprofit organization. LINC is an acronym for Limited Income Communities. Founded in 1983 with decades of creating communities for thousands of families and seniors throughout the state, LINC is committed to building and preserving housing that is affordable, environmentally sustainable, and a catalyst for community improvement. By 2012, LINC will have been responsible for developing over 7,000 homes in 61 communities across the state. It was always LINC Housing's vision to ensure that families and seniors residing in LINC communities enjoyed a high quality of life with excellent resident services and support to manage challenges and hardships when they arose. In 2003, LINC Housing's Board of Directors added life-enhancing services to its mission statement, and through this effort, the LINC Cares programs were established. Since its first after-school program opened in 2004 at City Gardens Apartments in Santa Ana, LINC Cares had expanded rapidly to provide a myriad of services at over 25 communities by 2012. Services included youth education, exercise and nutrition workshops, financial literacy, first-time homebuyer classes, career development, field trips, recreation, and arts training. In 2011, LINC Housing agreed to expand the scope of the in-house volunteer program to begin supporting the needs of other agencies that shared its passion for improving communities. LINC Volunteers was officially established as a social enterprise geared toward providing support workshops, training consultation, and management of volunteer resources within the nonprofit sector. At LINC Volunteers, we're passionate about connecting concerned individuals with programs and agencies that affect positive change in the community. But of course, there are challenges that LINC Volunteers will face. According to research, it is more likely for a low-income child to grow up to spend time in jail than ever complete a single college course. We know that a contributor to this statistic is that there are an estimated 13 million children plus in the United States who return home while parents are still at work. To tackle this issue, LINC Volunteers are placed in out-of-school educational services geared towards bridging the achievement gap between lower and higher income populations. Also, we know that many senior community members who live on fixed and limited incomes are oftentimes faced with the decision between housing, decent foods, or medication. No one's grandparents should ever be faced with such a dilemma. LINC Volunteers serve in senior health and well-being programs that are geared to sustain the physical and mental health of low-income seniors so as to improve their quality of life and further their ability to live independently. Lastly, did you know that in California, for a single worker making minimum wage to afford the average-priced two-bedroom apartment for his or her family, they would have to work over 120 hours per week? LINC volunteers serve throughout agencies that address this issue by building affordable, safe, and beautiful housing communities in both rural and urban communities in need of revitalization. Volunteers can support this work by using their expertise in graphic design, grant writing, administrative assistance, architectural drafting. The list goes on. Achievement of our organization's goals is best served by the active participation of citizens within our community. Our organization accepts and encourages the involvement of volunteers at all levels of our corporate operations and within all appropriate programs and activities. So let's take a closer look at how individuals get involved at LINC Volunteers. At LINC, volunteers go through an enrollment process coordinated by our volunteer resource management staff. The stages for each volunteer's enrollment include identifying a local LINC volunteer service location, completing an online application, participating in an interview, and attending this orientation. Note that additional screening will take place for volunteers being placed in direct service of at-risk populations, such as reference verifications and the completion of live scan fingerprinting to confirm backgrounds. At the conclusion of your orientation, you will be instructed by staff on whether you will be required to complete a background verification, and if so, where you can complete this enrollment requirement. Once these processing steps are completed, a volunteer resource management member will contact you to discuss your placement in our program and will schedule you to receive your first day of training with an assigned direct volunteer supervisor. Beyond providing your first day training, this direct volunteer supervisor will be your primary contact for all your volunteer needs, such as adjusting your schedule when necessary, allocating tasks and responsibilities, providing feedback on completed projects, and to ensure that you are making the impact in the community that you desire. Please note, vendors or business partners, including third-party property management of LINC, are not authorized to assign tasks or request assistance from LINC volunteers without direct consent of your appropriate direct volunteer supervisors. All standards that guide volunteer service can be found in 3 policy documents: the LINC Volunteer Handbook, your specific volunteer position description, and the policy agreement form. You should have a copy of each in front of you now. These policies were established to protect you, those who we serve, and LINC Volunteers itself. Furthermore, volunteers performing service in accordance to the policies and procedures found in these documents are covered by LINC's general liability insurance. Now we'll take a look at some important policies that direct your service as LINC volunteers. At the end of this orientation, you will be asked to review these documents and sign a policy agreement stating that you agree to abide by each. In terms of attendance and tardiness, volunteers are expected to perform their duties on a regularly scheduled and punctual basis. If they're expecting to be absent or late for a scheduled service appointment, or if something just comes up last minute, they should inform their supervisor as far in advance as possible so that alternative arrangements can be made. All volunteers are also expected to report to work fit to perform their responsibilities. The use or possession of alcohol or illegal drugs is strictly prohibited. Any volunteer who reports for service under the influence of illegal drugs or alcohol is subject to immediate termination. In addition, volunteers are responsible for maintaining the confidentiality of all private or privileged information they learn while serving as a volunteer. Confidentiality is required whether the information involves a single employee, volunteer, resident, or other person associated with LINC. In terms of dress code, as representatives of the organization, volunteers, like employees, are responsible for presenting a good image to residents and to the community. Specific dress codes are found in each individual position description. Check with your direct volunteer supervisors if you have any questions. Entry into residential units is also a sensitive matter. Volunteers are not authorized to enter into LINC residential units for any reason other than an emergency. Entry into a resident's home opens the volunteer up to risk associated with property damage, injury, and false accusations. This policy is established for the protection of our volunteer team. In the event of injury, volunteers should immediately report to their supervisor any injury sustained during their volunteer service to themselves or other staff members or residents. LINC wants to make sure that our volunteers receive the medical support they need for injuries sustained during their service to our agency, but we can only help if we are made aware of that accident. Also very important to note that LINC will not tolerate unwelcome, harassing conduct even if such conduct does not rise to the level of harassment as defined by law. Any offensive behavior that denies individuals their dignity and respect will not be tolerated. There will be no retaliation against any volunteer who, in good faith, files such a complaint. Volunteers are mandated to report to their supervisors as soon as practically possible when they observe the following inflicted upon a child, senior, or dependent adult by other than accidental means: physical, verbal, or financial abuse, abandonment, abduction, severe or general neglect, sexual abuse, assault or exploitation, willful cruelty, unjustifiable or inhuman corporal punishment. Also, instances of self-neglect, regardless of its self-inflicted nature, are to be reported to one's supervisor immediately. Another important thing to note is that volunteers may not bring unauthorized guests to their service appointments without prior permission from their direct volunteer supervisor. Which brings us to record keeping of your volunteer service. LINC desires to track the time volunteers donate to our organization for many reasons. First, it allows us to recognize our volunteers for service milestones that they may have reached. Secondly, LINC will add up all the service hours provided to our organization each month and year, and will use this total number of donated hours as a measure of the community support for our cause. This helps LINC fundraise for future new affordable housing communities and services. Also, it is important for us to record volunteer hours for insurance purposes in case of injury or illness during service. So, on the first day of service, volunteers will be shown where the service hours log is located. Individual volunteers are responsible for accurately signing into this service hours log before they begin volunteering and signing out after each volunteer appointment is concluded. Direct volunteer supervisors will review this document for completion and submit it to volunteer resource management staff on a monthly basis. As a LINC volunteer, you will be part of a team of staff who are all working to further our mission of providing homes and services to those in need. LINC volunteers' staff goal is to provide the support needed for you to make the impact in your community that you desire. Please do not hesitate to request information, training, and materials that are essential or beneficial to the program or studio in which you are involved. Thank you so much for your interest in LINC volunteers. Concluding this video, please take a moment to review your volunteer handbook and position description. Once this is completed, you will be asked to fill in the policy agreement form and turn in this document to LINC staff prior to leaving today. Lastly, for those volunteers applying for positions that require direct services to vulnerable populations, please request additional information on LifeScan fingerprint providers in your area. It is recommended that after the conclusion of this orientation, you immediately report to the nearest third-party provider for completion of this final enrollment step. For those volunteers who have yet to turn 18, please take the guardian consent form to your guardian for completion. Both fingerprinting and the submission of guardian consent forms must be turned in prior to a volunteer's first day of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. This ends your volunteer orientation. We know this is a lot of information. Please refer to your handbook for details, or do not hesitate to reach out to LINC staff for questions. We see you as the most important ingredient to successful implementation of services to those in need. Our hope is that you find your time with LINC as both personally rewarding and beneficial to those you serve.